What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review because I actually have some thoughts about Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, but it's the Ultimate Edition, and I could just talk about this all day long by myself. I decided to do something new for the channel, which is bring aboard somebody that isn't just somebody. He's one of my best buds and who I consider to be the biggest Batman vs. Superman fan in the entire world. So, before we hop into this discussion, if this is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James. If you're wondering who that is, that's me, and I love talking all about movies. So if you love what you see, what you hear, and if you love movies just as much as I do, go ahead and hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel and tap on that little notification bell. It's right there, just to stay up to date with anything new. Okay, so let me waste no more time. Get comfortable, buckle up, and let's talk all about Batman vs. Superman Ultimate Edition. What's going on, guys? Alrighty, so today on the channel I have one of my best friends and the biggest Batman vs. Superman fan that I've ever met in my entire life, Christopher Santiago. Brother, how are you?
Oh man, you used my government name on this one. And yes, this video I have been waiting for 4 years now. 4 years now. Oh man, but yeah, thank you for having me on, man. This is fantastic. I'm doing very well. Staying safe, staying inside, keep my routine exercising, all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, man, this is gonna be a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So it's funny because you mentioned staying safe, staying inside. We're still dealing with this whole like self-isolation thing that we're doing. We're social distancing. And I thought, what better way to spend time inside than to revisit a film that I absolutely hated. Now, I hated the theatrical cut of BVS, so I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, and before I had Real James, it was Reflect the Screen. Now, what's funny about Reflect the Screen is that we had 4 articles about how bad Batman vs. Superman was, but luckily, you blessed me with, the UE to watch the Ultimate Edition, to see Zack Snyder's true vision. And we're going to dive into that. But Chris, before we go any further, how can the good people of YouTube find you?
They can find me a couple ways. So if you look for just Chris, C-H-R-I-S, Santiago, S-A-N-T-I-A-G-O on YouTube, you'll find a list of accounts. Just narrow it down to channels, and you'll see this face with in my Ronin Pro Wrestling suit and tie gimmick get up. I'm the ring announcer there, so I have a photo of me there with my my suit and tie on and everything, got my microphone. So that's where I have my channel. So you can probably do that, or I think my handle for there might also be Chris Sant 1104, just like my Instagram, my Twitter, which is Chris Sant 1104, which is CHRIS SANT 1104. Go ahead and find me on there. And I'm also going to use this moment to plug you in as well, brother. Make sure you guys give a follow to the real only real movie channel review channel you should ever check out, which is It's Real James. So just go ahead and type it in. It's ICS Real REEL James JAMES. So go ahead and check them out, guys. Best genuine movie reviews I've ever had the pleasure of seeing. I'm not saying that because you're one of my best friends, brother, but I'm saying that also because it's true. It's damn true. So there we go. Yeah, man. So let's dive right into this thing, man. But that's how you can find James and myself.
Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate that. So I know that I said self-isolation is the reason I am actually, dedicating time to Zack Snyder, and Flanagan's is trying my patience because they want me to go outside and get their food, but I won't do it, all right?
No, they're doing delivery now. What are you talking about? They're doing delivery.
Okay, fair point. Don't do that to me, all right? My waistline needs to decrease, not increase over these next few months.
Like all the bag and everything, so you clean and everything, and then just and everything, but it's still delicious.
Right. So a big reason why I wanted to watch this version of Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman is because 4 years ago to this month, people were anticipating one of the best superhero films. This crossover event was going to be huge between Batman and Superman and, of course, Wonder Woman. And I walked out of the theater really disappointed. Thanks to not only you, but the boys over at Real Blend, Sean O'Connell, Jake Hamilton, and even Kevin McCarthy, who said the UE is worth it. And I mean, you and I have spoken about this, but there's a book coming out, the release the Snyder Cut book.
Yeah. Sean, from what I've been seeing, he's writing a book about the Justice League Snyder Cut. And I think that's an amazing task to take upon. So Sean, shout out to you, man. You're doing a fantastic job so far. And I mean, Zach's only feeding you more and more content for your book, man. So, this is, I'm just so happy that people like him are starting to take notice and taking initiative to starting to kind of give the word out more about the true vision of Justice League that was supposed to be meant for us, unfortunately, before all the politics and all the family tragedy unfortunately went down.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that what's so special about this movement is that it's basically what any film fan wants to see is the director's cut, the actual vision for a final film. And I mean, I know we touched upon like 4 years ago how you liked it more than I did, but it's almost insane to think back 4 years ago how we both felt about this film. So Chris, can you just tell me your initial thoughts when you walked out of the theater 4 years ago today?
Looking back, obviously in hindsight, knowing what I know now, it's difficult to look back on, but I know that my initial walking out of that theater reaction was, this was almost everything I was hoping for. I could tell there was some meddling in it and everything. I could tell this is not the full movie, what we were supposed to get. We got a lot of clips that were in the trailers that were not even present by any means in the movie. So I was like a little confused by that, but I was still very happy walking out because, as you know, Man of Steel is my absolute favorite movie of all time. You know, that movie won my heart, my life, basically. It really helped me out during a time of me reinventing myself and like trying to change my ways and like, you know, just make myself better. And then when they released the teaser for BVS during Comic-Con, I believe it was 2013, I think it was. Yeah, because then later on in 2014 was when they started like dropping like the first look at Ben Affleck as Batman and everything. And all the hype that was surrounding this movie was just, it was astronomical. I mean, if you look back during 2013, 14, and 15, brother, when you look back during those times and you look at all the like the media press of like Batman vs Superman, I think was gonna be like the most expensive film, you know, in the past like 5 years, something like that. It was gonna be a very expensive film, and you know, just so much riding on it because it was the first time ever in history that we were gonna see in like, you know, on the big screen, Batman and Superman sharing, you know, a movie together. And also then they brought in Wonder Woman, and it's like, whoa, like what are you doing? Like this is already big, you just made it bigger. So I think that the thing that this movie may have built itself on was expectations. You know, these are three of the biggest names in comic book history. I walked out extremely satisfied. I was like, this is a great movie and everything. This is great. And you know me, I defended this movie. A lot of people that were turned off by the theatrical cut, by everything, they don't want to watch the Ultimate Edition because like, oh, it's a bad movie, I'm not going to watch this ever again. It's a shame because, again, this is a totally different film. And like, even you can attest, and now you told me everything, it's better.
It is. And what's crazy is, okay, so 4 years ago this month, I thought to myself when I walked out of the theater, okay, my hype was here, and now it is like down here because everything was bloated, a lot of scenes didn't make sense. Why is Flash time traveling? Nothing really fit for me, and it turned out to be an overambitious film. So I thought. I saw the UE, and I'm not gonna lie to you, Chris. I'm gonna go on record. I'm gonna say it.
You don't have to lie to me and everything, man. I know everything you thought about it when you.
I know, but I like the UE so much, so I guess. Can you say that I'm a fan of Batman vs Superman? Yes.
By now, hopefully, yeah. I mean, well, here's the thing: you're a fan of the real BVS. You're a fan of the real Batman vs Superman. You're a fan of the real movie that Zack Snyder had intended for us. You know, and I'm pretty sure in his archives there's a BVS version that's probably like 5 hours long. I'm not gonna be surprised. Sure. Because I think even he went on record, or someone on record, for Justice League. The original Justice League cut is about 4 hours long or something like that. Like the true cut of it. Like if you're watching it from Zack Snyder's story, it's like 3.5, 4 hours long. And it's like, what? So I guarantee you if that's how it was, I'm pretty sure this film was probably even longer.
Yeah,
so
I think so too.
Like, so yeah, man, it's just, it's astronomically different. And, you know, to this day, I still, you know, Deontay Wilder, he just, this whole, like the Ultimate Edition is, I feel like people need to give it a second chance. Like they need to, because it's just different. It's not what you saw in theaters, and it answers any and all questions, or I feel like it answers almost everything that you might have had originally from when you walked out the first theater. Going back to you now, man, like you're looking at 2016 when you watched and you're like, this is a POS. Yeah. Why did I watch this film? This is not, I mean, and like these are your thoughts. Obviously, these aren't mine, you know, but like a lot of people shared your same thoughts and everything. You know, a lot of people did. Like the mass majority did not like this movie. And a lot of it was granted because it's like this plot makes no sense. Why is this happening? Why does Lex care about this so much? Like, we have no explanation a lot of times in that film, and there are a lot of subtleties that Zack gave to this story of like, why is this happening? But they were cut out. So it's like, you don't know why a lot of things are happening or why you're here as compared to there. So when you're looking back, brother, at 2016 BVS, but now you're here in 2020, you've watched the full movie for what it's supposed to be now. Just give us your thoughts, man.
Okay, so I'm so glad you brought that up because I have a lot of positives that I wrote down. So besides it being a good film now, we'll get into what I think is a huge reason why I'm now more in love with this film than I ever was. It is arguably the most beautiful superhero film to date because of Zack Snyder and Larry. Is it Larry Fong? Is that his name? Larry Fong. Their unique perspective when it comes to shooting film is crazy, and most of this movie was shot on film and IMAX cameras too, which is awesome. I mean, Zack Snyder really likes to take different, I guess, a different approach to what we're used to seeing. In the MCU, for example, a lot of that's on digital, if not all of it's on digital. So it gives a very artificial feel, but here you get something so real and so grainy. There's a lot of noise, and I love that the color is very solemn. This is a different brand of superhero movies, and I really do wish now, after seeing the UE, that Warner Brothers would have just went with this vision. It's so beautiful, Chris.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just, I mean, some of my favorite scenes, like in that whole entire film, the very beginning of the opening act, where you're watching Bruce Wayne was in Metropolis when all this was going down during Man of Steel. Like, just that sort of cinematography. God, just there's just so many different like parts of that film that are just so artistically beautifully constructed. And like, even like the death of the Waynes, we watched that. We watched the death of the Waynes more times than we probably, like counted on fingers, honestly. Like, dude, like we watched that, like that type of scene in any Batman movie done over and over and over and over and over and over again. But for some reason, Zack's just popped out. Everything from them walking down the streets, leaving the movie theater after watching, I believe it was Excalibur or something that they were watching, yeah, which is just Zack Snyder throwing in references in his films. And then just, you see like them going down the alley. Here comes Joe Chill with the gun. And, he shoots Thomas first after you see, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan he just looks like a Thomas Wayne. He looked phenomenal. Yeah, he does. So he looked great. And there's the scene of him holding back Bruce and him clenching that fist.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Wow.
Yeah. In the scene where they cut close to Bruce in that moment, right before Thomas Wayne goes to throw a swing at Joe Chill before he pulls the trigger, you see his hand, like in his leather glove, just like clenching, like, and shaking, ready to just, defend his family. It's just cinematic beauty because there's just so much edge. I mean, and I think you and I could even talk a little more about it, right, where how Zack just throws in these little things into his backgrounds, into his settings, in his shots, where he just kind of tells a story through images, through visualization. And I feel like that is a art form in cinematography, especially in the comic book movie era, that is hardly seen. Like, but Zack is just so into that type of style where he likes to throw in symbolism, right, and different like little details of the plot throughout the shots that, like, dude, just all throughout this whole movie, it's a cinematic masterpiece.
Right, and not only did the UE make me appreciate that part of Batman vs. Superman much more, but it also gave me a deeper appreciation for some of our cast. Ben Affleck, I said it in a review that I will verbalize to you because I didn't write the original review for what was once Reflect the Screen and not Real James, because yes, Real James wasn't always Real James, but Ben Affleck is the best on-screen Batman that we've ever gotten. And in the Ultimate Edition, he's still the best. Then you have Amy Adams, Lawrence Fishburne, and even Alfred. Jeremy Irons gives the best Alfred, I think, Chris. I mean, I don't know if you think he's the best, but you tell me.
Well, no. I mean, obviously Michael Caine in the Christopher Nolan trilogy, just phenomenal. So like, he's like, Sir Michael Caine is he's just a great actor in of itself. But I really feel like Jeremy Irons' Alfred was just the humanity of the Batman story. With Jeremy Irons as Alfred, I feel like he gave such a genuine performance as Alfred that like, oh Jesus, yeah, I'm getting chills to thinking about it, man. It's just wow, like he gave such a genuine performance to Alfred being the only family that Bruce Wayne has left, that it works. And like towards the end of the third act, when like the scene of Batman getting in the Batwing after he comes to his realization that, you know, like he needs to change his ways and go back to the way he was. He gets in that plane, he's starting to take off, and excuse me, he's talking to Alfred over intercom in the Batwing, and he just says to him, you know, I don't deserve you, Alfred. And Alfred just responds back the way only Jeremy Irons can. No, sir, you don't. Oh my God, it's just
so good.
Like I feel like that was the biggest feel-good moment of that entire film. And like for a movie that a lot of people would consider depressing, I was like, there were a lot of feel-good moments in that movie where it's tender and it's real, like the love between Superman and Lois, and then Alfred with Bruce and everything, and that moment there where they had a little interaction, just my favorite feel-good moment of that entire film. So just Alfred, Jeremy Irons, just, oh my God, he's incredible.
I agree with you. And what's crazy is outside of these standouts that we're talking about, there's one actor that grew on me, because I'm not going to lie to you, Chris, for the first like 40 minutes of the UE, I still wasn't convinced with Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. And I don't know how you felt, but okay, so did you like him as Lex Luthor 4 years ago or no?
Yeah, I think because he just brought this real insanity to the character. Because we all know Lex Luthor is obviously insane just from his character alone. He's a megalomaniac, and he likes, and you know, he has this undying need to take down Superman, and it's like, you're crazy, man. But like Lex brought this this psychology to it that just really stood out, and I was taken by it because it was just so, like, I don't know, it was different.
Yeah.
Like just the way he would talk to Senator, the way he would talk to even Superman. It's like you're insane. Like this Lex is very young. Obviously, he's a young kid, but like he has so much ambition and so much belief in what he's doing is right, that like he just has the right amount of conviction to it, if that makes any sense. No. He has this amount of conviction, and Jesse brought it with the psychological mind game.
And it's so funny that you bring that up, that you think he's the only one that could do it. I have two actors' names I want to throw out to you, because I was watching this on Amazon Prime, and they have the X-ray, so they bring up different facts and general trivia. Apparently, Bradley Cooper and Joaquin Phoenix were pegged by Warner Brothers to play the role of Lex Luthor before Jesse Eisenberg was signed and then brought on to do all the filming. I can see Joaquin as this zany kind of like megalomaniac kind of character. Do you think that they would have been better or no?
I don't know. I mean, obviously we've seen what he's done with Joker now, and that's just been amazing in and of itself and everything. Like, you know, his performance as Arthur Fleck and Joker was, I mean, it was award winning, as we saw. He's award winning. So would he have done the same thing with Lex, the way that Zack wanted to portray him? I feel like he could have. Why he didn't take it, I don't know. We don't know those kind of politics, but you know, Jesse Eisenberg, I mean,
he's great.
I thought he did fantastic.
No, he's great. And there's something else that I forgot to mention to you, Chris. The UE helped me understand what I did not understand 4 years ago, which was the nightmare sequence and the Flash time travel, the Crisis on Infinite Earths thing. I don't understand why they had to put that in the theatrical if they weren't going to add more context around it. If anything, Chris, I'm not going to lie to you. If you were to say, hey, James, what are 2 things or 3 things that you would take out of the theatrical cut after seeing the UE? I would take out the nightmare sequence and the time travel sequence out of the theatrical cut, because only in the UE did I understand what the heck happened. I texted you and said, I get it. I understand now, Chris.
But like, I think they may have left in the nightmare sequence only because visually it looks amazing. Again, another thing done by Zack Snyder. That's like that only he can. Like just visually, it's amazing. It's an action sequence. They're gonna keep it in there. But in terms of like evolving on it and like, you know, elaborating it further, they didn't do it in the theatrical cut that much. UE, yes, absolutely they did. They explain it to its fullest potential, and they show why really that like it's like that Bruce feels like it's necessary to take down Superman now. I don't know, man. If I were you, I still wouldn't have cut that. Like I would not cut that scene out at all. The UE just expands on all these things that people had questions on. Nightmare sequence and the Flash's cameo in that perfectly, because it's like Zack had a plan. He used Flash as a further mean to make Bruce feel more panicky about what's going on.
Right.
And because again, the only context that Bruce Wayne has about Superman is what he saw in Metropolis, what he's seeing nowadays. You know, the people are considering him a god, and then you have this guy coming out of nowhere from the future, even if it's a dream, saying you were right about him, you've always been right about him, and fear him. Like, you know, those little things are gonna psychologically make you believe, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. So it's just like that whole entire sequence of him just amazing.
It is. And I know we're gushing a lot about the UE, right? But there are still some things I feel the movie is not really excelling in. That there's that slow motion effect that we get in a lot of Zack Snyder movies that I felt was a little overdone. And that is at the top of my list, honestly, because sometimes it works, but other times it's style over substance. I don't need to see Superman's cape in slow-mo so often. I get it. He's huge. He's a bigger than life kind of character. But the slow-mo distracted me sometimes, and I think that just goes back to Zack Snyder being stylistic. This is the kind of filmmaker he is. He's not going to depart from what he's shown in 300, which I've seen 12 times, Watchmen, which I've seen plenty of times. Like, these are things that he's brought over into BVS, which, in my opinion, made it a unique film for the most part. I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about the slow motion and some of the little gripes that you have, or I had with the film?
A lot of it is meant to really, I guess, immerse yourself into the movie in a way. Like, a lot of things are happening. Here's a way for you to kind of slow down. Like, for example, Bruce's dream sequence in the first act when he's walking to his parents' grave and everything. Like, just the slow-mo scenes of him walking there. A lot just happened prior to this scene happening. I think it's a way for you to kind of, as a viewer, to slow down and go, okay, now I'm here with Bruce. What is he doing? Right. He's walking through a field with flowers. Behind him is the burnt down Wayne mansion. He's going to what we're assuming, and we're proving correct, is his parents' grave.
Right.
So their like cemetery. And you know, it's slow motion stuff like that. I can see why it gets to be a little too much, because then it's like, bro, like 80% of your shots are slow-mo. But again, I think there's a reasoning why he does that, not just to look stylistic, but also to let these moments breathe. For example, when Superman goes to Mexico to save the people from that burning building in the background during El Dia de los Muertos, you know, and it's just slow-mo. He's flying down with the girl in his arms. He places her down. All the people are gathering around him, and they start like putting their hands on him, right, like to like reach out to like their god, basically. That whole sequence, God, from start to finish, had to be at least 30 seconds. And it's those kind of moments that like you slow down, you're watching, you're breathing.
I definitely agree with you. I think those are great points. I mean, for the most part, I still like the slow-mo and everything. There were just a few scenes. Now, there are still some moments in this movie, especially in the UE, where I feel that moments happen and they just sort of happen without an establishing shot, because there's a lot going on in this movie. There's Batman's side of the story, and then there's Superman's side of the story. And when you go from one moment to another, like, I don't know how I get from the Batcave to Kansas in the snap of a finger. You know, it's very fast and sudden sometimes, and it kind of distracts me from the plot, because I'm trying to think of how the heck I got all the way across the nation in 2 seconds.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember. Did you and I have class together with Dr. Shumo? No, we didn't have class together with Dr. Shumo, because he was my capstone professor, and you hadn't graduated yet. So, you know, God rest his soul, Dr. Shumo, Dr. Moises Shumo from FIU. Yeah. One of my favorite professor ever. You know, again, God rest his soul. One of his biggest gripes about anything in editing was jump cuts. He hated jump cuts. Hated it. Unless you were transitioning into a scene from when you were talking, he would be like, no, you gotta put something over so it doesn't look like you're clicking like that. So kind of going back to what you're saying about how, like, I don't understand how this makes sense. Like, why am I here all of a sudden and I'm here? Right. Like, that's a very granted gripe. You know, I'll give you much credit for that. That's totally granted, because, you know, again, it's confusing to the general audience. Like, why am I all of a sudden in Metropolis, or why am I all of a sudden in Gotham? Why am I all of a sudden in LexCorp? Why am I all of a sudden in the desert? Like, what the heck is happening here? Yeah. To kind of put, I guess, myself in the thoughts of Zack Snyder during that time, it's to show the like the differences in tone and the differences in character between Superman and Batman. In a lot of scenes we see with Superman, it's very brightly lit. It's either daytime or it's just very brightly lit setting. And then when you see Gotham, when you see Batman, it's very dark.
Yeah.
It's very like gruesome. It's dirty. So it's like it's like you're getting the different worlds of the characters so that Zack can show you here's where the line is drawn. Superman is obviously the light, Batman is the dark. So it's, I guess that's what he was probably going for. That's the only thing I could really kind of think in my head as to why he would want to do something like that. So jump cuts, are they necessary? Never. But I feel like for this story he was trying to tell, it was just like, this is the only way he felt like it would really get to the audience that these are two totally different characters right now before they come together and they become like one, essentially.
Right. I mean, the one thing that the UE, honestly, above all else, above all these negatives, above all these positives that we just listed, the one thing that the UE did for me is make me excited for a certain cut. Speaking of cuts, the Snyder cut of the Justice League, because if it wasn't for the UE, I'm not going to lie to you, I was already kind of on board with wanting to see Zack Snyder's final and his true vision for Justice League, but the UE gave me a bit more excitement for when this day comes. There's no reason why Warner Brothers shouldn't release this, and I think it's very timely now that we're all at home, and especially it's been 4 years. I think that what we need is, we would probably need to just like be patient, because Warner Brothers owns a lot of what Zack Snyder's already filmed, if not all of it. And I know that this movement wants it now, but I would rather give Zack Snyder $10 million to go into production, or post-production I should say, and edit everything, color it properly, add in visual effects, sound effects whenever needed, score, because there's a lot of bad that came from the Justice League, and one of those things unfortunately was the end of the DCEU. So Chris, there are like a few questions that I do want to ask you, because I know that Justice League was definitely critically a failure. At the box office was also a failure, unfortunately. So even before that, do you think if BVS was received positively, would Justice League then be a good film, or was it always doomed from the onset?
Well, I believe it was doomed again because of all the backstage stuff that was going on. You know, I think despite how good BVS might have done or how bad it did, you know, all the stuff that happened with Zack's daughter, you know, God rest her soul as well. You know, it's just a big tragedy. And God bless the Snyder family for being so strong throughout all that. I feel like no matter what, that might have still happened, and we still would have gotten like a half piece of Justice League. Now that you've seen the UE of BVS, and now that you can understand what Zack was trying to do, you know, it makes you, you know, feel that much worse for Justice League as a film, because it's probably, in my opinion, probably the most meddled film in all superhero like comic book history. Like in terms of like the amount of times it was written, the amount of times that they had to reshoot a lot of things. I think they reshot about 90% of the film.
Oh my gosh. And
it's just, you know, it's tough to see, because then you see Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Ray Fisher, who plays Cyborg. I love that guy. And like now Ben Affleck coming out and showing their support for the Snyder Cut, because they're all like, yeah, it exists. It's out there, dude. It just needs to be finished, like in terms of like post-production. But yeah, it's there. I don't think it's a matter anymore of if, but now when.
Yeah.
So, you know, especially with all the trash it's been gaining, you know, back in 2017 and even 2018, it's like, okay, that's cute and everything. You know, Warner Brothers probably, you know, you know, you guys are so cute, trying to make us change things. Ha 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 ha. But now Hollywood's getting into it. And even other companies like Subway, A&W, and Arby's, they're now like chiming in on Twitter. They're like, yeah, bro, release the Snyder Cut. It's, you know, I feel like now it's just a matter of time, and who's going to open up that GoFundMe account?
Listen, it's not your boy, but, you know, I would hope somebody would want to do it. That's a good segue into this next question, though, because I came across an article. It's an older article, of course, but I had the thought of, when the Snyder Cut gets released of Justice League, do you think, like personally, not just like your feeling or fan bias, do you think that if the Snyder Cut is received well, everyone goes back and is like, whoa, this isn't a 2-star film anymore. This is like a 4.5 or a 4. Do you think part 2 of Justice League then gets put into gear, or is the DCEU kind of dead?
I think it's dead. Dead in the water, unfortunately. And it died when it died when they got rid of Zack, because it was no longer then about Zack Snyder's DCEU, because Zack was doing a very meticulous job of making sure that the DCEU revolved around Superman.
Yeah.
Everything that happens from Man of Steel, BVS, even parts of Justice League, and even Suicide Squad, like they all reference Superman. And, you know, everything was going to be revolved around him. Everything's going to be revolved around how Superman brings these heroes together.
That's right.
Without that drive anymore, because basically they've cut out anything that they're planning to do with Henry Cavill's Superman. I hate that because obviously he's my favorite. So that, you know, now that that's kind of done with, even if the Snyder Cut of Justice League did get released, I don't think there's any hope for getting a part 2 to it, unless Warner Brothers basically says, hey, why not? But I don't see that happening. You know, they're already too deep into the Batman with Matt Reeves, which I'm still stupid excited for.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be
You know, I'm so excited for Robert Pattinson as Batman. That's going to be great. They're also doing Aquaman 2. Wonder Woman 2 is coming out this summer, regardless of all this pandemic. It's coming out later in the summer. But they're still doing that. They had Birds of Prey, and which was fun.
so
You know, it was a lot of fun. And they're coming out with just much more stuff now. And from losing like a million directors, they're still doing the Flash solo film. But, you know,
he's being done dirty, man. He's being done dirty.
There's your boy. You done did it. But yeah, man. So they're just, I don't see it ever happening, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I hate it,
I
but
agree.
you know, I think I'd be happy just seeing the Justice League, the Snyder Cut, because then it's like we have the trilogy. We have Man of Steel, BVS, and then Justice League.
Yeah, I honestly agree with you. I think that Part 2 of Justice League is so far off the radar for Warner Brothers. Right now, they'd only be focusing on the Snyder Cut, if at all. I mean, I think that the DCEU is no longer, but DC Films is still stronger because of Joker. Aquaman still made a bill at the box office. You have Wonder Woman. All these films, I think DC, what they need to do is, and Warner Brothers, of course, they need to focus more on solo superhero films at this point, because there's no catch-up. They can't play catch-up to the MCU anymore. It's over. And I think that Zack Snyder will never come back to making any DC films for Warner Brothers or for any studio. I think he's already too jaded. And honestly, I think this is a good little transition into this question, because you and I have already kind of spoken about it off camera. But, I mean, if somebody were to come up to you and say, Chris, where exactly did Warner Brothers go wrong with the DC Extended Universe, what would you tell them?
I mean, I think they went wrong with it right at the moment when they got rid of Zack. You know, he was their, in essence, he was their Kevin Feige in a way, because he was the mastermind behind everything that was going to happen. You know, everything that would have happened would have spun off from him. When you get rid of the creator, you essentially lose anything that's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
Because, you know, at that point, then you're just guessing of what's going to happen next. But, like, we don't know. Zack may have done an arc where, you know, Superman does turn to Injustice Superman. We're probably never going to see that. We're probably never going to see Justice League get Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern like it was supposed to in the Snyder Cut. And, you know, just it wouldn't fit. So I feel like Warner Brothers dropped the ball when they got rid of Zack in a horrible time, too. You know, I feel like that's where they kind of dropped all that stuff. So, but I'll turn my question to you and say, like, when do you feel, you know, especially now that you've seen this,
Oh yeah.
where do you feel like they dropped the ball?
To me, it didn't even happen like right after BVS, because BVS still made so much money in its opening weekend, and even worldwide. I mean, the movie made back almost double, if not triple, its budget, which is insane. The thing is, for me, they tried to play catch up with Marvel, because while it made a lot of money, it wasn't getting critically received as well among fans and critics themselves. So when they started playing catch up and Warner Brothers saw, oh my God, what's Kevin Feige doing? Oh, how's he doing that? Oh, let's just put a bunch of superheroes in one movie, slap Justice League on it, and then just run with it. Their downfall was the evil of comparison. I mean, when you start comparing your brand to someone else's brand, that's where you have a downfall. Because for me, now that I've seen the UE, I noticed that it's great counter programming to Marvel, because Marvel is, like I said earlier in this video, they're traditionally like very straightforward, always like bright lit scenes, nothing is too dark. I mean, when you see Zack Snyder and his vision for the DCEU, It was bleak, it was very real, it was gritty, visceral, raw, and I wanted more of that. After watching the UE, I kid you not, dude, yeah, I was a little exhausted, it's long, but I wanted more. I wanted to see what's next because you can feel the passion that Zack Snyder bled through, and unfortunately, Warner Brothers didn't see it the same way, so when they started comparing themselves to the MCU and their run, I think that's where they fell flat because Joss Whedon was so far removed from the MCU at that point. Age of Ultron was awful. He never got brought back. Kevin Feige's like, we're not even going to ask you to come back. Like, we're moving forward with the Russo brothers and some other amazing directors. So Joss Whedon tried, I guess, to jab back at Disney and Marvel, and it didn't work out well at all. And unfortunately, that was the downfall for Warner Brothers, was just that comparison. So it's a shame.
No, I definitely agree, man. It's just, you know, when you're trying to play catch up with somebody or trying to emulate someone else's success, it almost never works for you because you're not the originator. You're not the one doing it. The best thing for anybody to do, and this goes for any artist and for any creative, do what you want to do. Let everything else kind of fall into place. Yeah. I feel like Zack was always that type of director where he goes, I don't care whether or not it's well received. I wanted to give my vision to something. If you like it, thank you. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. But I'm not going to appease the masses and kind of not be true to myself. So I feel like that was always his biggest card. And unfortunately, they kicked him out. And I hate that. And I want to still support DC films because, you know, I love the DC superhero genre and everything. It's great, but as much as I love the Marvel superhero genre, they both provide me something fantastic. But you know, it's hard too, knowing all these behind the scenes politics and everything.
I know, it's like I want to pull my hair out of my head when I see all these photos he's sharing, all these little bits of information that I wish, honestly, like we would have been able to see the full picture of, because I know that there's so much that Zack Snyder had up his sleeve that he hasn't gotten to and maybe he'll never get to, but I really hope that one day we see the Snyder Cut. And for me, it makes me think of all these other directors that are seeing what he's been through, and they probably turned around and they looked at the studios they're working for and they're like, hey, you never ever cut this much out of my film. My film will always be the film that I hope we get on the cutting floor, because there's no way I want this to be my reality. No other director wants to go through this, dude, but Zack Snyder, he's done it valiantly, I'd say. He's handled it nice and, you know, professionally, I'd like to see or imagine.
I mean, I think even he understands it is what it is, and it's just like, I can't complain because it's not going to change what happened. The only thing I can do is move forward from here and hope that, you know, people just still support me and everything, and they still support my vision. But I'll just never forget, bro. I'll never forget it. And I pulled it up on my phone. I'll just never forget him when he dropped this.
Yo, what a moment. What a moment.
Dude, this picture right here, I don't care if you say it's photoshopped or not, man. I don't care. Zack dropped this thing and my mouth just went. I couldn't believe seeing Henry Cavill in the Resurrection Superman suit. It was so good.
It was, and that to me, like, I don't know. I think that this movement, it genuinely like screams like optimism and happiness and joy, because that moment we just shared right now is a moment I'm sure so many others shared when they saw it for the first time too. So, Chris, we can talk about Ultimate Edition all day, every day, but what I'm curious about, and I'm sure others are too, what was your rating of the theatrical cut and what was your rating of the UE? Because before I give mine, I want to hear it from you.
Well, for sake of keeping this short, you know, again, we can talk about this all day, but we only have probably another 10 minutes of this. we can fill up. We go over an hour. In hindsight, looking back at the theatrical cut of BVS, I'd probably give that now like a 3.5. UE, I give it 100. And you know, me being biased alone, bro, like just this movie is just levels better than the theatrical cut. And you know me, I still heavily enjoyed the theatrical cut. I defended it till my dying breath, man.
Yeah, dude, you wanted to like unfriend me. Like, I don't.
What's that?
You wanted to unfriend me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. At one point I was like, you know what? I'm done with James, man. I'm done with him. I'm done with him slandering all the BVS stuff. I'm done with this, man. No, I love you, man. I'll never do that to you. But just, you know, like it's just levels different. And it's just a gosh darn shame that this wasn't what people were given originally. Yeah. Because I feel like if this was what people got originally, despite it being so long, I feel like this would probably have gotten like a 55, 65 on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. That kind of stuff, instead of being 27, 26. But Zack gave us the story. Zack put everything there. They just took it out. And, Zack got the flag for it because it's just, Zack's a bad director because Zack doesn't care about story. To the contrary, he really does.
When I saw BVS 4 years ago, 2 out of 5. But now, Chris, I am happy to say, and I'm looking at my Flash, and I'm thinking, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5, brother. It's so good. I know you're pumped. I know. But yeah, dude, this was so much fun. I really appreciate you just taking the time to come and talk, man. Again, I love you like a brother. You're more than just a friend, you're family. And I can't wait to watch the Snyder Cut with you, and we're going to eat so much pizza. It's going to be lovely.
Oh, my God. Yes, we're definitely going to have pizza with pineapple. And I love you, and I hope you have a tremendous day. No, but seriously, in all seriousness, brother, thank you so much for having me on. I'm glad you gave this film another shot. I'm glad you watched the real movie. And I'm glad that you're able to kind of be a little more excited for what the Snyder Cut is supposed to be. And I'm glad that you were able to, just see the real story for what it was. And I'm happy that you like it now. So thank you for having me on, man. Thank you for.
Of course, brother. I'll see you again soon, man. Stay safe. I love you.